Republicans should be running for the hills this morning because the blue wave is building, my dear friend, Mr. Berman. What are we talking about here? Well, Matt Van Epps, the Republican candidate, he won it by 9, but this is a district that Donald Trump won by 22 points, 15 points, 17 points. This is a 13-point gain for the Democrats in terms of the margin, and excuse time for Republicans is over.
After spending multiple days publicly panicking about a special election in Tennessee's ruby red 7th congressional district, Donald Trump this morning is now desperately trying to save face with a smug, unearned victory lap after Republicans narrowly won an election which should have been a landslide blowout for them, but wasn't. Consider this. Just last year, they won that district by 22 points. In this case, they only won by 9 points. In other words, Democrats overperformed by 13 points, and that was after Republicans panicked, spent millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to try to keep this seat, and in so doing, had to keep Donald Trump at bay to hold him at arm's length because he's so toxic for them at the moment. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several things to talk about regarding this election, and in the next video, or in one of the videos today, we will talk about the broader GOP panic about this result. But I want to focus here on the result and Trump's reaction. So, as Mediaite reports, Trump touts big win after GOP narrowly hangs on to Flashpoint Tennessee seat. Donald Trump praised Matt Van Epps' electoral victory late Tuesday as Republicans held on to a deep red Tennessee House seat and fended off progressive state lawmaker Afton Bain, whom Trump fumed hates Christianity during the race. Van Epps, a former Army helicopter pilot, secured Tennessee's 7th district with barely 54% of the vote, defeating Bain in a district Trump carried by 22 points last year. The win increases Republicans' House majority to 220 seats, though that number shrinks again when Marjorie Taylor Greene leaves in January. Trump immediately seized on the result, hailing it as a victory. Congratulations to Matt Van Epps on his big congressional win in the great state of Tennessee. The radical left Democrats threw everything at him, including millions of dollars. Another great night for the Republican Party, President DJT. Van Epps reciprocated the praise in his victory speech. Trump was all in with us. That made the difference. In Congress, I'll be all in with him. Meanwhile, Democrats are hardly discouraged by the narrow loss. Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin warned Bain's surge in Trump-heavy districts was, quote, a flashing warning sign for Republicans heading into the midterms, mocking the GOP for spending millions of dollars to just barely hold on to the seat. Okay? So we'll look at that. But I want to focus on the Trump part first. Dan Pfeiffer, who is the co-host of Pod Save America and author of the Message Box Substack, which you should definitely subscribe to if you're not, he made this point. Okay, Matt Van Epps, after the victory, may have said, oh, Trump was there with us and that made the difference. But that actually wasn't the case during the campaign. As he notes, 1 year ago, Trump won this district by 22 points. Yet he was entirely absent from the GOP campaign. Republicans never used him in ads. He didn't campaign for Van Epps. His role was limited to some tweets and then a phone call to Mike Johnson while Johnson was at a rally. Johnson put Trump on speakerphone, but both he and the audience seemed, at best, ambivalent about Trump's involvement. There's no question Van Epps' strategists were banging their heads against the wall since their entire strategy had been to pretend Trump didn't exist. But of course, Trump can never resist making it about himself. An Emerson poll showed Trump's approval rating a couple of points underwater. That's not catastrophic until you remember that he won this district by 22 points just last year. So that's a hell of a swing, right? That is a hell of a swing. 24 points swing in just 1 year? The GOP's decision to keep him off the trail suggests their internal polling showed something even worse, because internal polling tends to be more accurate and more severe, right, than what we get in the public. This is a heavily Republican district. High turnout should help them. Low turnout should benefit Democrats. And yet Republicans still determined that the safest place for Trump was nowhere near the campaign. Put simply, GOP strategists concluded Trump would energize Democrats more than Republicans, even in a deep red district. If that dynamic holds into 2026, the midterms, the GOP is in serious trouble. Republicans were able to generate high turnout even without Trump. This was not some low turnout special election. Turnout was nearly at 2022 levels, and the race still moved 13 points or so in the Democrats' direction. Despite the loss, that's a very big deal. Pfeiffer goes on to conclude this. Last night's results, where a Democrat performed 13 points compared to 2024, suggest that the map is expanding before our very eyes. Usually, upsets or closer than expected election results happen when one party is caught napping. Not here. Republicans poured millions of dollars into the race. They successfully nationalized it, and Democrats still overperformed by 13 points. There's still a long way to go until the midterms, but history suggests these problems tend to get worse, not better, for the party in power. After the elections last month, some Republicans comforted themselves by saying those races were in blue states. Tonight's results showed that Trump backlash is happening in some of the most pro-Trump parts of the country. Pfeiffer's right. And Trump is still trying to make it about him and taking a smug, unearned victory lap when GOP strategists were like, hey, we can't put you in ads. We can't have your face. You got to stay away. We'll put you on speakerphone at a rally. Otherwise, back the hell off. Not good. Harry Enton breaks it down further still. This is CNN's chief data analyst.
Let's talk about the numbers. Republicans should be running for the hills this morning because the blue wave is building, my dear friend, Mr. Berman. What are we talking about here? Well, Matt Van Epps, the Republican candidate, he won it by 9, but this is a district that Donald Trump won by 22 points, 15 points, 17 points. This is a 13-point gain for the Democrats in terms of the margin, and excuse time for Republicans is over because I hear all about these special elections. Oh, the turnout's so low. It's not representative of what happened in the midterm election. The turnout last night in Tennessee's 7th district was equal to the turnout in the 2022 midterm election. So the blue wave, it seems to be building right out of center of Tennessee.
Interesting. I mean, so in terms of the numbers, the turnout looked like a regular midterm election, not a special election.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And of course, we have a midterm. What about 11 months from now?
All right. What have we seen in terms of trends in all the special elections the last year?
Okay. You know, I wouldn't necessarily give a hoot and a hollering about one special election in Tennessee. I love the people in Central Tennessee, but Central Tennessee is nothing special compared to the rest of the country. But what we see happening is, take a look here. Okay, 2025 U.S. House special elections. Dems outrunning Kamala Harris. A lot of blue here. A lot of blue, which is what I think the nation might look like a year from now if these results hold. Arizona 7, you see a 17 outperformance of Kamala Harris. 23 points in Florida 1. 16 points in Florida 6. 13 points in Tennessee 7. 28 points in Texas 28. And then 17 points in Virginia 11. So we've seen it throughout the nation, whether you go from the suburbs of Washington, D.C., all the way to the southwest in Arizona, whether you're looking at Texas, whether you're looking at Tennessee, whether you go down to Florida, we have seen the Democratic outperformance of Kamala Harris happening across the political map. What happened last night in Tennessee ain't just staying in Tennessee. It is spreading itself throughout the nation. As I said, to me, looking at these results, it looks like a blue wave is building.
So we're going to play the rest of this clip in just a second. But again, this is why Trump's desperation before the election actually made sense. And his attempt to save face here actually doesn't. But you had nothing to do with this victory. As a matter of fact, one might make the argument that this victory for Van Epps was only possible because they ignored you, because they avoided you, because they ghosted you, because they left you on red, okay? And now you're trying to take credit for this. If these patterns hold, it's going to be a brutal 2026 for the Republicans, and again, could potentially put the Senate in play even more than it is now. We're talking about the House. The Senate, we also need to try to win as well, even though it's much more of a long shot. Let's continue the rest of this.
And it's not just that it's blue, it's that it's double-digit blue.
It is exactly right. It's double-digit blue. I will note, I looked at the stats. If, in fact, you had a 13-point shift like we saw in Tennessee, and you applied that to the 2024 presidential map, we are talking about a gain for Democrats of north of 40 seats.
All right, in terms of the history.
Again, I want to be very clear. What is he saying? He's saying that if you apply this to a national election where Congress is on the ballot, like 2024 or 2026, that Democrats would have won the House by dozens and dozens and dozens of seats. Not only would we be in the majority, but it would be by a comfortable margin, at least in the House. So fingers crossed.
What does this mean as we project forward?
Okay, so we're looking at these special elections. We're sort of applying these hypothetical numbers, right, in terms of, Democrats would gain north of 40 seats if, you moved everything over, 13 points from the 2024 presidential result. But we actually have history to show that what happens in special elections doesn't just stay in special elections. It spills over to the midterm results. Special elections and midterm results. I just keep going to this. When a party outperformed in special elections since 2005, 5 out of 5 times they went on to win a majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. What happened last night in Tennessee is a very, very bad omen for Republicans and a very, very good omen for Democrats.
There you have it, folks. Couldn't have put it better myself. Again, nothing is predictive. We can never take anything for granted. Democrats should not rest on their laurels. But even though Republicans won the seat, we actually, Democrats, I would argue, have much more positivity to take from this. Like, this is actually still a better night for Democrats than Republicans, even though Republicans actually won the election. That's how bad things are in the general trend for Republicans as we head into the 2026 midterms. And that's why Donald Trump has been panicking this entire time. We'll look at the broader GOP reaction to this as well, operatives, strategists, politicians, because they're not happy about this result, but we'll talk about that in a separate video. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.